Hello everybody, welcome to 2025, new year, same Geographically Challenged. It's episode number 73. I didn't think that we would be doing an episode this early on in the year, guys. I thought the first episode of the year maybe would be one at eXTREMESLAND or something like that. But there's actually been a lot that's actually happened over the holiday break, and I thought with the changes to the major specifically, it feels like this is kind of like the time to get a good early episode in, and I'm sure no one's going to be too disappointed to see us get an episode in early on in the year. But how you guys been? What'd you get up to in the holiday? Let's say not the Christmas holiday. Blair doesn't like Christmas, but what did you do for New Year's, Blair? Did you do anything for New Year's? I know you're a party man.
Me, a party man?
Yeah.
Oh, no way. I just went out. Like, hung out with a few friends of mine. I just been kind of just disconnecting myself from all the social medias, the entire the HLTV top 20 and everything that's happening. I just feel like even roster mania, as crazy as it is, it just feels a little too much. So I'm just like disconnecting completely, and I'll be back. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to be here. Happy New Year to everyone as well. Yeah.
I'm glad you're here as well into 2025, mate. It wouldn't be the same without you. But look, the good news is, at least as far as Rostermania in Asia is concerned, there's not actually that much to go through. If we're talking Rostermania in general, it's a shit show. And a lot of them are like not even locked in, and there's like only a week or two before the year kind of kicks off. But at least in Asia, there's not that much to talk about. What about you, Pilski? What did you get up to? You feeling good?
Mate, I'm a family man, so just spending time with family, being wholesome, being PC, and not saying anything that would get me cancelled.
All right, well, that's probably a good way to be. Hopefully, we can manage to maintain that throughout 2025. We haven't had a bad track record so far.
I'm surprised about that, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's actually crazy.
That's pretty good. How long has this been running? Fucking hell.
We've been doing this for 4 years. Well, actually, this is now the 5th year because we started it in 2025. So happy 5 years, guys. I don't think
Holy
it's
shit.
quite 5 years yet, but
is it politically correct to say Asian Counter-Strike anymore? Is that okay?
We can say
I think it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Great, thanks, Blair.
I give it the Asian pass.
Thanks, right, thank you.
All right. Well, let's get into the topics because there's a fair bit to actually touch on here. Now, the first one that I want to bring our attention to is Mr. Starry. Mr. Starry is back in Tyloo, or back from Tyloo in Lynn Vision. I don't know if you guys saw the tweet that I made. But most interestingly, he went to Tyloo for free, and then he came back from Tyloo for a lot of money into Lynn Vision. So I don't know what Lynn Vision have been up to in that whole little it was 4 months. He was in Tyloo for 4 months. They built this super team. They built a Chinese super team, and then all of a sudden that's blown up. But they're now $95,000 richer. So I guess that could be worse as far as Tyloo's concerned.
I mean, that's what not qualifying to the major does to a motherfucker, right? I think that's kind of obvious. But to be fair, I am a bit surprised because obviously, Jam Young kind of relinquishing the reins of IGLing or even being a Counter-Strike player. I think that was the first domino falling, so to speak. It was a big surprise for a lot of us. But yeah, I thought they'd still, stick around with the players they have. I think it's a very solid, probably the best rifling core outside of the Mongols in Asia, right? Easily by far. If you look at Mozia, you look at Mercury, you look at Starry as well. But honestly, I'm a little surprised. I don't know what the hell's happening with Lynn Vision. What's happening with Tyloo over there? Lynn Vision having to spend money to get him back. I guess they really want to make this core work, make this team work. So I think that's a good sign. They're putting where they're putting the money where the mouth is. But for Tyloo, guys, what are you doing? Just because you didn't make the Shanghai Major doesn't mean you just completely internally combust. So I'm kind of worried for what Tyloo is going to be forget the next year, dude, for the next couple of years. Are they just going to disappear into obscurity? It's kind of scary.
Forget the next year. Forget the next couple of years. Think about next week, mate. They're literally playing eXTREMESLAND in 1 week. And we don't know what their roster is actually going to be. Honestly, at this point, not 100% sure what this Lynn Vision roster is actually going to end up being as well. At least, according to HLTV, you can see there in the article, it says Afufu is their 5th. On Wikipedia, it says that Afufu's been benched. So not 100% sure where they're going with that 5th slot. But I don't know. Is it nice to see Lynn Vision sort of starting to come back together? Obviously, it's minus G. But apart from that, we've got the 4 of the core plus Zaka on the AWP.
Yeah, that's the thing. Please keep Zaka on the AWP. Just keep him on the AWP. Get a 5th player. I think that the fact that they just have an IGL just already makes them an actual team as opposed to Tyloo right now. So yeah, kind of surprising, but then again, I don't know what the fuck's happening in Chinese Counter-Strike right now.
Any thoughts, Pilski?
Yeah, I mean, to add some context as well, the funniest thing about this, which not many people will know because not many people watch ESL Challenger League, but I remember casting that final where it was rumored that Starry was going to go to Tyloo and he was still playing for Lynn Vision, and he played against Tyloo in the grand final, absolutely fucking fisted them. And I was thinking to myself, like, why would you fist the team that you're going to join and stop them from going to ESL Pro League? And now he's turned around and left Tyloo after 4 months and gone back to Lynn Vision, who have had a streak of going Pro League into the major, although maybe not having the results that they would have wanted. They've been attending the big events, and now Starry's back in the team. So, I was all thinking like copium, like, oh, fuck it, oh, it's fine, guys. They still have the super team. As soon as the next season rolls around, they're going to qualify for everything. Next minute, the whole fucking team falls apart, which is fucking crazy. The thing is, as well, that really bothers me about this is like the brand power and the legacy of Tyloo. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? We were finally going back in the right direction. We built a Chinese super team to do some justice to the fucking Tyloo name that's been around for ages and ages, and now we're just letting the good players go to our rivals, to go to other games, when historically Tyloo has been, the team that you get benched in and you never leave. Like, ask fucking Freeman, ask half of these cunts that were just stuck on their bench and stuck on their roster for ages. So I know, bro. So it's like, what's going on in Tyloo? Have they got new ownership or something? Because I think someone's fucking forgotten how they run things.
Yeah, and I guess you can see it all go wrong once Advent got removed, I guess. I mean, that's the moment he left, it all conquer his head.
Advent.
It turns out it was Advent all along. Like, have you seen shit like this on Advent? Sure, they weren't like making deep runs or whatever, but the moment Advent got released, it's like Tyloo. They find the super team. Everyone's super hyped up about it, and they do fuck all. Don't make it to the major. Jamyang's like, I'm leaving Counter-Strike, going to Valorant, where he fails to even make it to the Valorant team in Tyloo, and now I've let go of Starry. So I don't know what's happening. Honest to God, I know we're supposed to talk about stuff and even try to hypothesize what might be happening behind the scenes, but I genuinely have no idea what's happening with Tyloo right now.
I mean, you mentioned it, but that was my assumption when it was rumored that Jamyang was going to Valorant. I assumed he would just go to the Tyloo team because they're in the Chinese league. Slowly did literally the same thing. He was on Tyloo's bench and he went and played Valorant, and he's still playing Valorant for Tyloo's team. So it's like, why? That's what I assumed would happen with Jamyang if he was going to go across to Valorant, and now that hasn't happened. I'm just left feeling very confused.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's obviously disappointing with what's happened to Tyloo, but in some senses, I'm kind of happy to kind of see Lynn Vision at least like rebuilding in some way. And the other positive that I can kind of take away from this is that there is actually some money in the Chinese scene. Like, I look at that buyout figure. It was 680,000 RMB, so Chinese currency, which is, again, like I said, about 95. I think it's a little bit less than 95,000 US dollars. Obviously, depends on what day you check the currency exchange rate. But let's just say 95k USD as a buyout. Like, that's obviously not insane money in the world of Counter-Strike for a buyout when we're talking about, tier 1 Counter-Strike. But if we're talking about just purely within Asia, within China, I think that's a pretty significant amount of money for a player. So it's kind of showing me at least that an org or a team like Lynn Vision that we thought like these guys don't have a huge amount, behind them. If they've got $100,000 basically to put down to bring Starry over back, like there's still some big money, I think, in China behind some of these teams. So that's, I think, at least a positive sign, and especially that they're willing to kind of continue to invest into Counter-Strike, and they have that kind of, I guess, in this case, long-term vision. So I think there are some positives to take away from it, even if it's like a bit of a weird situation, particularly on the Tyloo front. But yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest loss for Tyloo is what you've said there as well, Pilski, is like the brand power of this organization is just like in the bin. It's been years now since they were relevant. It felt like finally they were going to get some degree of relevancy with this team, and that's kind of fallen apart again. And it's like, if you're a Chinese player now, like, instead of going, I want to play for Tyloo because they're like the premier brand, the legacy brand in Counter-Strike, you're probably thinking, you know what, Rare Atom doesn't look like a bad shout. Lynn Vision probably doesn't look like a bad shout. And if we're just talking about in Asia in general, like the pedigree of these kinds of names, like Tyloo 3 years ago probably was like the premier Asian Counter-Strike brand. If we're including Mongolia, if we're including ANZ, if we're including any of these, we would talk, at least in Counter-Strike, obviously, where we would talk about Tyloo number 1, and then like maybe Mongols would be like number 2, but this was before the current day Mongols had really started to pop off. You'd be looking.
No, it was
at
also
like
Vici.
Yeah, it
was Vici.
It was Vici. Yeah.
And then obviously Greyhound or Renegades, depending if you want to sort of group them in. They had quite a big sort of brand name and following within, at least in ANZ. I don't know that FlyQuest has quite hit that same mark, obviously, just yet. They need to hold on to that team for a little bit longer. But yeah, Tyloo kind of like dropped off the ball like quite substantially, and at least in that respect, in my opinion,
and
which
also,
is a little bit sad.
I also feel like they've kind of like there was some kind of magic to the Tyloo name, and there was some kind of like fuck you factor, like even early CS or like 1.6 and shit, of just having like these cracked aimers and these really skilled players that could just take aim duels with some of the EUNA guys, and there was something magical about like you get these Chinese aimers that are like playing against structured teams, and that whole identity is just gone. Like, especially after picking up the Advent core and the Advent team, where it's like they even trying to play a structured style, or even some of the ex-Tyloo guys that are playing for Rare Atom all try to play a bit more of a structured style right now. Like, there's none of that identity, which you can say what you want about it, because the whole thing when that was a thing back in the day was like, well, if they just played structured, they would make deeper runs or they'd be more consistent. But I don't know. There was something to that. I think there was something magical about that.
Fear factor when you played against Tyloo. Anyway, I guess, look, there's not that much really to comment on with regards to this until we see what that Tyloo roster is going to look like, and hopefully that will be soon. So let's move on to our next topic, which is Regali into FlyQuest. We were sort of theorizing, obviously, at the end of the last episode, who's going to replace Alistair. We've got our answer here. It's going to be Regali, and the rest of the roster is still more or less going to be the same. Now, I mean, regardless of the fact that they've removed Alistair, I guess we've sort of already commented on that. What do you guys think about Regali as a replacement? Were you hoping? I think a lot of people that I've seen comment on this were kind of hoping for, let's say, a bigger name, if that makes sense. They were looking at someone that maybe had a little bit more experience or had a bit more of like a WoW kind of a name than Regali. So I think some of the reaction to this has actually been a little bit more negative than what I thought that it should be, personally. I actually don't think this is a terrible pickup. I think this is very much kind of in line with where FlyQuest probably should have been looking for a player. There's obviously a lot of potential with Regali. We've seen what he can do in kind of tier 2, that tier 2 space in some of his previous teams. So I honestly think it's not a bad pickup. It's not a bad one to sort of just look at and say, you know what, we'll give him a crack. It's not as if you're going to pick him up and say, yes, he's absolutely, definitely going to be better for the team than Alistair, at least in my opinion, the Alistair that we saw in the last sort of 3 months or so. But I think there's, an argument to be made that this has a lot of upside for FlyQuest. So I don't hate it. I don't necessarily love it. It's not like a wow factor for me necessarily. It's kind of just like exactly almost where I thought we were going to get a player. I don't think I would have pulled that exact name out of the hat personally, but I think it's in line with expectations, and I'm hopeful. Let's just say that.
Like initially, my initial reaction was calling it a side grade, but having put in a little bit of thought, I feel it's like it's a little bit better. It's not a complete side grade. He's obviously had some experience playing in some bigger events, right? He's played in a major, it's played in Cologne, and quite a decent number of lands. So I think it's a good thing for the FlyQuest boys. They're getting someone who's not exactly very, he's not very green, has been around the block for a while. So from that side, great. I think it's a serviceable offer, right? I just don't think he even has the peaks. That's the thing. Like, even with Ali, go back a few years when he was actually hitting his shots and everything, you'd have a couple of games where it just pops the fuck off and it's just like unplayable at times. I don't think I really remember having seen Regali do much, anything much like that. But then again, he was playing OG, and what happens to players on OG. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I just feel like it's a budget pick. Let's be real, and FlyQuest aren't going to be breaking the bank just trying to get someone crazy. So even though a lot of people are like, yeah, we expected something better, but if you ask them to give us a name, I don't think you can really come up with any easy names, right? Like even I'm struggling to find out any good names where it's going to be super, won't be super expensive and whatnot. So I guess we'll wait and see. Like I said, I agree with you. I'm not like, super disappointed or anything, but at the same time, I'm not like giga hype, like, holy shit, what a replacement, what an upgrade. I don't think it's necessarily that case. For me, it's more about for FlyQuest, with Ali gone, and we do know what he brought to the team when it comes to just his presence, right? As a person, as someone, as a kind of a cheerleader as well for the team when even things might be going bad. So I do feel like will that aspect of Ali having been, removed from the team, would that affect them coming this season? That's also one thing we need to kind of, just talk about, or maybe just mull over as well.
I think there's like three main things that I want to talk about with this, which is just like, I don't know, I'm not thrilled like with the pickup necessarily, or think it's like an amazing pickup or anything like that, but it's really just down to the team's execution, like whether they can change their play style and around having Regali in the team and become a better team overall, because I don't have like a super huge amount of faith outside of maybe O's competition that he's going to start carrying the team or anything. And there's a lot of like logistical things to address as well, like now you're mixing a European player into your team. It's like, where are you playing from? Does he come to Oz, or do you play in Europe more often? And how does that work with the org and all of that? So I think considering a lot of the organizational and like logistical factors is the reason why you see pickups like this. And a lot of people who are just fans of CS don't like consider those things as much. So it's really up to them to be able to like leverage like putting Regali in the team and changing their play style as to whether it'll actually make them better. I don't think like just the numbers on paper is going to be like, yeah, they're instantly better. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think as well, it's interesting to see FlyQuest pick up a non-Australian player as well. I mean, we know that there's no one there, but like that says a lot about the talent pipeline in Australia right now, doesn't it? Where it's like, I feel like traditionally for Australian teams, you would always pick up someone from Oz or NZ. I know a lot of them are tied up in talent right now, to be fair, but particularly in an all-pro, there's just like, there's no talent pipeline. There's no one that's really that good enough to be able to step up into a tier one team like that, which I feel like in the past you would always farm from the lesser teams in Australia, and that's just not really a thing. Whether that's because FlyQuest is that much better than Australian competition, or whether there's just not anyone that's good enough to fill those shoes, even potential wise, is like something that says a little bit about like the state of the Oz scene. I think
it's going on in New Zealand, man. Like we used to just they're like our ARP farm basically, and now there's nobody.
Well, I mean, there's nobody that's that like undeniably that good, to the point where like you're picking up just a European AWPer, like not something that's amazing. You're just like a European AWPer, like a guy is better than anyone in Australian or NZ. That says a lot to me. And yeah, I think for FlyQuest, I'm keen to see if they can actually like change up their style and improve a lot. And whether this is, and the reason why I mentioned like the Oz talent pipeline being dead kind of thing is like, is this, we've talked about the fact that FlyQuest might need multiple changes, right? Is it going to be another European guy? Are we going to slowly start changing this team and keep an Australian core and just mix more and more European players in? Or are we going to start poaching from talent? Or are we going to start picking up more players from the scene? Are they good enough? Those are things that we have to think about in the future if we really think like FlyQuest needs more than one change to become a top team.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have had some conversations in the background. I won't necessarily give away too much, but I think the intention in some cases is still to look towards Australia and New Zealand when possible, but it was in this case maybe not quite an option. So I think that gives you a bit of an insight. Obviously, we would tend to agree. I think we've said that in the past here on Geographically Challenged, that if FlyQuest were to look to upgrade domestically in it, pretty much in any role, almost like there isn't really anyone that you'd look at and go, that's definitely an upgrade. In the same way that maybe in the past you could have gone, oh, let's minus this person plus this person, and it like actually kind of like,
or just in general.
Well, for AWPing or in general, like can you tell me that you're going to get any like for like better in any role on that FlyQuest roster from Australia or New Zealand right now?
I don't know. I think Nedic's pretty good, man.
Okay, sure, maybe, but he's obviously in talent, like you said, he's tied up, and I actually didn't really include that in my factor as being in ANZ because they're now, so they're an ANZ team, but are they in ANZ? Like I don't, it's
I mean, it fixes a lot of the logistical shit, that's for sure. Like with trying to get people from overseas.
All the talent aren't playing any tournaments right now.
No, MHL was like playing on a pug team over the off season. But someone asked him, is this just for the offseason? He said, yeah. So it seems like he's still going to be in Talon for at least the next 6 months. I think they're fine. I think they're okay. Obviously, I haven't heard anything to the counter to that. With regard to the logistics of it, I will say, I think just based on the way that the circuit is going to play out in 2025, FlyQuest will spend a lot less time actually at home, would be my guess. I think there's going to be a lot of tournaments that they're going to get invited to just by purely being inside that top 30, and they'll probably be spending a lot more time overseas than they were even this year, would be my guess. There may even be worlds, I think, where now that they obviously have FlyQuest behind them, that they're going to probably have some bridging boot camps instead of coming back home, especially with that international player involved. So I can really only imagine that they will be back here for very specific qualifiers. If there's going to be certain qualifiers that they, for whatever reason, don't get an invite for, or if it's something that they more or less need to be here for like a couple of weeks, maybe to play a singular qualifier, and then they're going to be back overseas, would be my guess. And anytime that they're back in Oz, it's going to be more of a holiday rather than actually coming back home to play.
Well, I think that's like a very clear change, right? Because even I feel like a few years ago they would be like, no, we don't want to have to move to Europe, and send it. We want to be able to live in Oz. So I think this is a bit of a change of direction for them. If that's
I don't know if they're. I mean, the implication that I'm saying here is not that they're moving to Europe. It's just that they're going to be on the road a lot more. Is my read on the situation. I think they're still going to live, with the exception of Regali. I think they're going to still live in ANZ, and any time that they have to play anything here, he's going to come down for that week or two period and maybe stay. But like I've had conversations, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of value necessarily in them being here. As we've seen, like they say they can't get scrims. They always regress when they're playing in ANZ. So I think any offer that's going to come their way, they're probably going to pick it up, and they're probably going to run with it and see what they're going to do. And I also think that, the fact that they have made this change, it does sort of signify, hey, we're not happy with just being like easily the best in ANZ and maybe not super competitive internationally. They are really looking for something more, which has always been what they've said. You know what I mean? They've always said we don't want to just be like just this good. You know what I mean? Like it's not just, we're just cruising. We don't want to do any better. It's like they do seem to at least want to go a step above, and hopefully that change is going to be able to facilitate that for them. But we'll see. We'll obviously keep our eyes on the prize for FlyQuest, and they'll be playing at Blast Bounty, which will be only in a couple of weeks. So we'll get a pretty good idea of how they're going to go with Regali there. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the episode. Moving on to a couple of the more recent announcements. The first one hasn't had a whole lot of reporting on it, which surprises me a little bit. I can't recall if I talked about this on the last episode, but Hero Esports have announced that they are intending to add Counter-Strike 2 to the the Asian Champions League, I think is what they're calling it, ACL. So if you guys are not familiar with who Heroes League are, they are a very, very big tournament operator within China. They are not owned by the Saudis, but I think there's an investment from the Saudis. Obviously, they're a Chinese company, so they can't be owned by a non-Chinese entity. So it's different to EFG, but they are more or less I would say, I guess, in the world of esports, one of the biggest competitors to EFG, just in terms of the fact that they do a lot of those kinds of like white label jobs. So I work with VSPO a lot, VSPO, which is now Hero Esports. Hero Esports a lot over the last 10 years. I've done all the Crossfire events they've done. They've been doing it for 10 years. And last year they were working on the PUBG stuff as well, which was not just in China either. They've got some footprint in Southeast Asia as well. And I don't know if you guys have run into them at all in your histories working around in Asia, but they are actually huge. It's a massive company. And they're launching like this Asian Champions League, which I don't really know exactly what this is. I think there is some kind of tie-in to Esports World Cup, by the way, with regards to that. So it will be interesting to see what this all means. But from the whispers and from the conversations that I've had, I did try reaching out to a couple of people internally at VSPO/Hero Esports to kind of get a bit of a read on the situation. There's not a whole lot of information that's coming out just yet. It seems like a lot of the details are kind of still being ironed out, but it seems promising to me. And I did ask, is it going to be like actual legitimate teams as opposed to like nation-based teams? Because I was a bit worried about that. It is going to be proper teams, and Oceania is going to be involved as well, because Oceania is, as part of the Valve system, part of Asia Pacific. So it is an Asia Pacific tournament. And it is going to be Valve ranked, like VRS ranked. So that's quite a positive step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. And I think, personally, Hero Esports is a pretty good shout to run something like this, because they are a very, very big endemic Asia-based brand. So this is what we've been saying for the last 2 years, that we need TOs endemically, domestically within Asia to kind of step up and run these kinds of things. And so I have some pretty high hopes for this. I don't know if I'm maybe getting a little bit too much hopium going on here, but I think it's pretty good news.
Yeah, I haven't really worked with them directly, but I've seen some of the stuff they've done, and I mean, nothing more to add apart from the fact that yeah, this event does seem like what, like you said, like a feeder event into the EWC sort of thingy. I'm seeing like they've added Honor of Kings. Never played it, but
Yep.
mobile. But the fact that it seems like just a number of games being put together and kind of like a mini Asian EWC feeding into that, right? But hey,
Right.
listen, man, as long as Counter Strike's there, fuck yeah, dude.
Yep.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not just that. Like, I like seeing the events in Asia, and we can talk about CAC as well to sort of transition into that. That CAC is coming back for 2026, so I think that's pretty good news. But obviously, this is a global event in Asia, not an Asia event. So I like seeing the global events in Asia. I like the IEM Chengdu's, I like the Shanghai Major, I like the CACs, but I think it's also important for the domestic tournament operators to have domestic tournaments for Asian teams, especially going into 2025. Right? Yeah, we want both. Yeah. And so it'd be nice to tie in.
Does CICs usually have a local invite, right? Or no?
They do.
Like a Chinese
normally team, there's normally like 3 or 4 Chinese teams.
That two Chinese teams last time.
I don't know like how you guys feel, but I feel like the Wombo combo of like having a minor region actually succeed, and what worked really well, at least here in OS, was like having a thriving domestic scene and like stable TOs, and then also having some international events where like 1 or 2 teams can actually play in them. So I feel like if that's what China's got going on this year, then that's going to be fantastic for the scene.
I mean, there's a lot going on. Actually.
I think they have that, right? So yeah, you got Chengdu, you have CSC. We spoke about this, I think, last episode as well. And with CSC, at least from Perfect World standpoint, right? Like the previous CSC, not many people watch because of the time zones and everything, but the major was watched by a lot of people. I think everyone liked what they did as well. So I feel like that's just going to drive more viewership for CSC internationally. While at the same time, you have at least a couple of teams playing at the CSC's IM Chengdu's, and then on top of that, if you have these more local Asia specific, or I would prefer it to be more Asia specific rather than just Chinese, because I don't think there are enough top teams in China right now to make things more competitive. But if you can have like something similar to eXTREMESLAND, but like 4 or 5 this throughout the year from different TOs, I think that's fucking great too.
Well, I think to an extent that is kind of what this Asia Champions League, ACL used to be a tournament. ACL used to be the ESL AU branch before they became ESL AU. So it's always a bit weird to just say ACL. I think of different, but this is what it's called. It's called ACL. I think that's what ACL is supposed to be with regard to CS2. I think it's supposed to be a bit like eXTREMESLAND in the sense that it is for the Asia teams. Obviously, we don't know what the slot allocation is going to end up looking like. And also, the other thing that I have a question about is whether or not it's going to be relevant enough for teams like Mongols and FlyQuest, probably would be the two to even play in, like, because it's going to be a domestic tournament to get the VRS points. First of all, is it worth them playing domestic tournaments? Otherwise, they potentially lose points to their domestic rivals, which will cause problems as we talk about the regional qualifications for the major going into next year. Or are they even going to be bothered? Is it going to be worth it for them to play in something like this? Regardless of that fact, like, obviously it will be sad to kind of miss out on a potential Mongols versus FlyQuest clash in something like that. Even if those two teams don't play, it's really, really good for the rest of the region to have something to play in, because, we're looking at tournaments that now need to add VRS points to the circuit for Asian teams. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to figure things out, and that's going to be really problematic. So already looking at something like eXTREMESLAND this year, I have heard that it's not actually going to be ranked. I think last time we talked about it, we thought that it was going to be ranked. It looks like it should be ranked based on the parameters of the event, but for whatever reason, I don't believe it's being ranked. So that's already a bit of a sad situation for me. But if there is now going to be a sort of more long-term league coming through from Hero Esports, plus we talk obviously about ESL Challenge League, which I assume will have the points going to VRS from it as well. You're starting to get enough events around that are going to have ranking points that are going to mean we should have a pretty good idea of where the teams are going to be ranked by VRS, and I think it will hopefully be better than 2024, although we obviously have to wait and see, and we did see a lot of issues in 2024 because of those ranking points being a little bit wonky. But there are a few more things kind of popping up, domestically and for internationally, at least in Asia. So I think it's kind of heading in the right direction. It's nice positive news to start the year off and worth talking about. The biggest news, obviously, of the year so far, seeing as we're only 6 days in, probably is the fact that Valve have moved to 32 teams for the major. Now, this was a rumor that we had discussed quite a bit, and we had theorized how many slots are going to go to Asia and how many slots are going to go to the rest of the regions and whatnot. Valve put out their statement, and there's going to be 5 slots for Asia. So that's already a pretty big win as far as I'm concerned. We've got 5 slots, one of which is going to go through to stage 3. Now, that will be the Mongols slot. Let's call that the Mongol slot, because that'll go to the Seed 1 VRS team from Asia. They'll get that direct invite through to stage 3 of the major, the 3rd Swiss stage of the major. And every other Asia slot, the other 4, are going to go to stage 1 of the major. So fair enough. Now, the conversation here becomes, first of all, why have they called it MRQ? Why have they not called it RMQ, right? They now have gone from regional major ranking to major regional qualifier. Why couldn't we have had regional major qualifier? At least that might have made a little bit more sense. But anyway, I digress. The bigger point in regards to this is, first of all, we have to be happy that there's an extra couple of slots going the way of Asia. Thanks, Mongols, as well, for the +1 into stage 3. They'll benefit greatly from that one. But I don't know if you guys have read like super into how this is all going to play out. Obviously, you guys are probably still on holidays, fair enough. But one of the clauses that's in there, one of the points in there, basically it says that if there are, first of all, this can be an online qualifier. It doesn't have to be a LAN qualifier anymore. So we probably no longer get a LAN qualifier for the major for Asia, which is unfortunate. Second point is that in situations where a ping discretion is going to be involved, the slot allocations can be allocated based on sub-regions. So I don't know exactly necessarily how that's going to work, what that necessarily means, but my interpretation of that would mean now instead of having slot allocations to a Asia qualifier, we're going to have slot allocations to the major. So instead of saying we're going to have 2 teams from China, a team from the East Asia, a team from Southeast Asia, 2 teams from Oceania, a team from the Middle East, etc., to the minor or to the RMR, which is what it was in the past, now they're going to say, okay, we're going to have 1 slot for the Seed 1 team from Asia, which would be Mongols in this case. They will go directly through to the major as an invite. Every other team now goes into whatever qualifier system they're going to run, and they've got 4 slots that they can allocate to Asia. How that's going to work, we don't know, but my assumption is you're going to have to do it based on ping, right? Which would mean probably 1 slot for Oceania, probably 1 slot for Middle East, and I assume in that they're probably going to lump into South Africa as well, so it will be Middle East Africa. 1 slot for East Asia, South Asia. Is South Asia going to warrant themselves a slot? Because that would really just be India, right?
No, I mean South and Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia, so that would be like rest of Asia, maybe, let's say. And then 1 for like East Asia, which means in that case, China versus Mongolia are playing against each other, which is not an ideal result. We would probably want, let's be real, a slot for China, a slot for Mongolia, a slot for Oceania, and then a slot for the rest. Would like in an ideal kind of like fairness system, I think, work out that way, just in terms of the strength of the regions. But you can't do that because then you're going to have Africa playing against fucking Singapore.
Yeah. And so this is exactly what I was worried about. Like when we were talking about this last year, is like once you start to shift to all these online qualifiers and you do away with the Asia Minor and things like that, this is the exact issue that we're going to run into, and it's going to fuck over a lot of. I feel like
better teams.
You have to make either a decision to regionalize and give some like slots to teams that don't deserve it to make sure that there's equal participation from different regions, or you have to fuck over the minor regions and support the strongest performing regions. You have to make that decision, and both of them suck ass.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at it as well. They added a driller's clause. I don't know if you guys saw that as well. So basically, if a team now wants to have a substitute, they need to choose a sub that will not change the region that they've chosen to represent when they add that substitution in. So that's kind of good. That's at least a start. But there was obviously a lot of different things in this whole, like there's a whole thing that you should probably just have a bit of a look through if you're interested in reading it. I could probably put a link to it in the description, but it's a massive, like, basically manifesto from Valve of how the majors should run from start from top to bottom, it includes all of the stuff around like technical specifications and stuff like that. But basically, Asia is now getting 4 invites minimum, and then based on performance, we're going to get more, depending on how things go. So that's good. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work. I said on another podcast, in an ideal world, like what I would want to see here happen is the next major will be the Blast Major. We know that they have some pretty good ties with Mongolian TOs. It's no longer Mesa. They're not working with Mesa anymore. They're now starting to work with ESN, Esports Network, I think is what they're called. But they have ties with them. They've been running some Blast qualifiers from Mongolia over the last year, and I think they're doing another one this year. Is there a world where Blast is, again, sort of thinking, okay, we're going to try and run a LAN qualifier for Asia from Mongolia with a local partner? I don't think it would be that prohibitively expensive, particularly if you're now not forced to do so. Maybe there is a world where they don't have to put the same money towards it as they did for something like the RMR, where they had to fly teams, they had to accommodate teams. Maybe it's a world where you say, hey, we're going to invite all of you, but if you want to come, you have to pay yourself, you pay your own way, or we're going to cover part of it or something. I don't know how all of those rules work. Like, do they have to cover it if they're going to run it on LAN? I have no idea. Obviously, that's in a way bad and good, because it will definitely affect teams that are orgless. They will struggle to potentially go to something like that. But I wonder if there's a world where a local partner can run a LAN qualifier. That way, at least then we don't have that ping discussion. And in that case, you're just now inviting the remaining top X whatever teams it was, I think it's 8 teams, into that VRS tournament to play off for the 4 slots at the major. That would be the ideal scenario.
Yeah, but historically, it's never happened, man. It's never happened.
Yeah.
I remember when I was working in So Strong, and we were doing a lot of these online qualifiers for the majors, for the Asian Minor, for DreamHacks, for DreamHack Masters and everything. Whenever there was an option available for them to do it, they'd be like, nah, just not worth the pricing. Apart from obviously the minors, which were LAN, which was dictated by Valve, they would never do it. And I'll be absolutely gobsmacked if Blast or any TO are gonna go out of the way and gonna do this for a region where Mongols are already through, by the way. And now you're gonna be dealing with Lynn Vision, Tyloo, maybe FlyQuest, and God knows which other team. I doubt it. I know that's the ideal scenario, but I really doubt it. But also, I do wonder, because Valve has said, right, like the one thing I want to touch upon here is the 4 sub-regions where they might allocate the slots to. Is it going to be by Valve, or is it going to be by the TO?
I'm just reading it again. And the problem with this is I honestly think that this MRQ format sort of thing, it raises more questions almost than it answers. Like, we do get the answers to some of the questions that we had going into 2025, but in this case here, he says, if invitations cannot be evenly split, the remaining invitations will be granted to the subdivided qualifier featuring the team with the highest regional standing. So then you're kind of like, okay, if we're now thinking we can't get 8 teams from Middle East and Africa, and then the next highest ranked team would be like, let's say it's Mongols, FlyQuest. Is it now 2 slots to Oceania, 1 for China because they're the 3rd base team, and then the 4th team will be like Mongolia, and it's a Mongolia qualifier, and that's your team. Like, I don't really understand what that means necessarily. I think that's more so in regards to like this North America, South America situation, where it's like they might get how many invites does North America and South America get? They get 10. I think they get 6 qualifier slots, so it wouldn't be a situation this time around for them, because they'd have 3 for North America, 3 for South America. But they might have one situation where it's like 4, like they might have 7 invite slots, for example, if they perform better at the next major, and then they get 3 for South America and 4 for North America, because the North America team is the highest rated team in the regional standings. So what does that then look like for Asia? I don't know. I have no idea how this all plays out. So it's one of those things again where it's like, well, we know a little bit now about how things are going to play out next year, but we still don't really fully understand it until we actually get into that process. So this will probably be something that we're talking about for like the next 3 or 4 months, where we're going, well, we don't really know. Like, we don't really know what is the pathway to the major for a lot of these teams. And if it ends up being what I assume it is going to be, which is these regional like playoff matches between the Oceania teams, between the Middle East Africa teams, between the Chinese teams, the Mongolian teams, and then the rest of Asia teams, it's kind of like I just can't really see that being like is it better is it better because we're getting more slots? Just like it's kind of like what's the analogy? There's the thing where like you get something that you want, but it's not really what like you actually wanted. Is it monkey's paw? I think it's monkey's paw.
Monkey's paw.
Yeah, it's like monkey's paw. It's like we get more slots, but now it's like, but we might be giving those slots to teams that just don't really warrant those slots to begin with, because if we would have had those extra slots to the minor, to the RMR, you would have qualified a Talon probably, and who was it that made the Talon and Lynn Vision would be the next two from the last RMR, and it'd be like, that'd be fine. But if it's going to go to Middle East Africa, and I have nothing against those teams, but they are not as good. Unfortunately, they've consistently come in last place at a lot of these RMRs and minors, and then you're going to give one to Southeast Asia. And again, I don't have anything against the Indian teams or the Vietnamese teams or the fucking Thai teams, but they're just not as good. And we're going to see that at EXTREMESLAND in a week. We will see that at EXTREMESLAND, that they are not going to compete. Yep. And it's going to be like, yeah, we got an extra 2 teams to the major, but it's going to be fucking Gigi How and I don't know, like fucking this ROG team from Thailand, like instead of Talon and fucking Lynn Vision, and or Tyloo or whatever, and that will be like, well, we didn't really get what we wanted,
I think you're fucked either way, to be honest. It depends what you value. Like, if you value the major being the best event possible, and you want to reward the teams that are the best in Asia, then yeah, you just like. If you ask me, it would be like fucking 2 slots for Mongolia, 2 slots for China, 1 for OS or something like that, and none of the other regions would get any slots. But if like representation of the minor regions and having them improve and not just killing those scenes is important to you, then you go the other direction, and you have to make a choice there, as far as I'm concerned. Either that, or someone has to spend a lot of money to run a fair qualifier on LAN, which we've got the data. It never happens.
Here's the thing, right? When it comes to the entire, giving spots, or just helping out regions, or just relying purely on merit, so to speak. I mean, we've had this conversation many a time where we've had people question why Asia even has any spots initially, right? And it did take a while. It did take a long while, but eventually we got there. We got to a point where we have a team who made it to the playoffs of a major. We of course have some of the pretty good runs that Tyloo have pulled off, some of the great runs that the Aussies have pulled off as well. So I think, look, it's never going to be perfect, and I completely agree with Pilski here. But I just feel like we just need to find the middle ground, right? Now they're adding from 24 teams. They're adding it's 32 teams right now. That's 8 teams being added, out of which 2 of the spots are for Asia, correct?
Yep.
Because it was 3, now it's 2. That's 2 out of 8 is that's 25%. Yep. That's substantial. That's great. Now, obviously, completely agree. I would love for it to be more heavily East Asia sided, right? With the Mongolians, 1 more Mongolian slot, maybe another Chinese slot, 1 for the Aussies, and 1 for the rest of Asia. But I don't know, man. Like, again, it goes back to the question I asked. Like, is it going to be Valve is going to dictate that? Is it going to be the TO? Is this something which is going to change from Blast to who's in the Star Ladder, or if they're doing it right? Is it going to change from Star Ladder to Blast, and how the allocation is going to be, or is Valve going to dictate that? We don't know any of these things, so we're just making it up right now. I would like it to be more standardized. I don't want to switch around, because this happens, dude. When we had the Asian minors, it was always the same fucking thing. TO comes in, they're doing a different minor, and then completely different slot redistribution for no reason apart from the fact they want to try something different instead of trying to stick with something which has worked, right? And now the fact that it's no longer 8 slots but 4 slots across the biggest continent in the world, it just makes it even more harder. So we can keep talking about it for another couple of hours easily, but I just feel like right now we just have to wait and see and decide how it's going to happen.
Valve should set what
I think Valve should set
Asia invites should be, and what the standard should be.
Yes, but also I feel like we have a better chance of making the TOs heroes rather than Valve. Like, how do I
don't think so, though. Look at what
man.
the Asia minor has been almost every time for like however long. Like, I'd love to count up all the shit Asia minors versus
none of those were by Valve.
Yeah,
I know, but that's what you're saying. Make the TOs make decisions, or make the TOs be the heroes of the story. Like, they never do that, though. They just like do what's convenient to them or cost effective.
Yeah, but it's also like, and obviously, this has been my experience. I've worked with a few TOs in helping them, or they've reached out to me, and sometimes I reach out to them as well, saying, "Hey guys, let's try to come up with something." And they're having a few events. Those are the ones I've been involved with. That where the allocation has been pretty solid so far. But when it comes to Valve, man, I don't even fucking know how to tell Valve. What if Valve's like, "Yep, it's going to be one for Africa, it's going to be one for Middle East, one for Asia, and one for Oceania." Like, what the fuck is that?
Don't even talk
They
about
could. They just could, because they're like, wait, so South Africa's far away, Middle East is over there, rest of Asia, yeah, that makes sense ping-wise.
India has the most people. They should have one qualifier for themselves.
Again,
just say
there we go.
For real, like we already get the benefit of this in Australia. We just happen to be a little bit better at Counter-Strike. It's like, oh, those cunts are so far away. Just let them have their own qualifier.
Yeah.
They could say.
I mean, if you look at the last RMR, the
Perth ping's better to Singapore than fucking Hong Kong. Like,
hey, I've heard the routing's all fucked up lately.
To Hong Kong. Don't make us go back to a world where we have to play against Asia.
That doesn't fucking help you in CS very much, Blair, because it's about fucking 8 cunts playing in Singapore, mate. Probably.
You have an option.
The issue that you run into is that you've got 4. Like, when we look at the last RMR, we've got 5 sub-regions that had qualifiers, right? So the 3 invite slots plus the 5 qualifier slots. So one of these qualifier slots is going to have to be merged or killed, basically. So I think the most obvious one to take away is just shift China into East Asia. That would then make sense to me. But then you've got probably the 2... debatably 3 strongest regions actually playing against each other for one slot, which would be China, Mongolia, and then Eastern Russia as well, are actually kind of producing a few decent teams.
Don't mind that, to be honest. I think that.
Well, and then you're going to give a Middle Eastern team a direct run in, and a Southeast. You're going to have alter ego and drillers at the major.
I think I hate it. I fucking hate it. But I think that you have to make rest of Asia play against the Middle Eastern teams and have to tackle that logistically in terms of.
So what is it? East Asia gets 2 slots, and then rest of Asia gets 2 slots, and ANZ is in rest of Asia.
No,
and the Aussie teams have to travel.
No, it would be one. I think.
No, there's an easy one here. 2 for East Asia, 1 for China. Sorry, 1 for Oz. 1 for rest of Asia.
1 for everybody else.
Yeah, I agree.
It sucks, but
rest of Asia is like, Middle East, South Africa, Singapore, which is fucked. That is absolutely fucked.
It is completely fucked, but, and this is, a big but here. There has been, yeah, and I can't lie. It has been, I feel that the routing has improved drastically since what it was 5 years ago overall. So I'm talking about, let's say, an Southeast Asian team. Right, Southeast Asian team can play a team from, maybe not from the Levant countries, but let's say from UAE. They can play them at a reasonable ping in a server based in, let's say, in India, for example, like Smack Center right there. It wasn't a possibility once upon a time, but there is a universe. If you get the right TO with enough servers around the region, you can host an okay qualifier for the rest of Asia. And for me, I think that's the ideal answer, because the best teams are going to be coming from down under and from Mongolia, China, East Russia, wherever that is, So
yeah,
I think that's the ideal one. But then again, that's because we want the best teams to come out.
Right.
So,
here's one more curveball for you. If Liquid make the change that they're talking about making, which is bringing in nerds for Yakindar, technically they could play in Asia as well, because they'll have JKS plus nerds, which would be the 2 Asia-based players, and then you would have the rest. There's 2 Canadians, and then Ultimate is Polish. Is he right? I think one of them's Polish.
Yeah.
So you have a 2-2-1 split. Basically, is my point here. So they could technically choose to play in Asia. By the way, wonder if that's an angle.
But which region, Jordan?
Fucking rest of Asia, mate. Like, let's just make it all rest of Asia. You know what? I actually wouldn't hate it if it was just, if they just were like, you know what? Fuck everyone. This is an online qualifier. There's 4 slots. Servers in Asia. You have to travel if you want to make it. Back to the fucking Wild West.
Is that better?
Everyone travels to Singapore or to Malaysia.
It's definitely fairer.
Half of the Mongolian teams, dude, play in fucking Thailand or Vietnam or China for their qualifiers anyway, because they don't get good ping out of Mongolia. So maybe that's just how it's going to have to be.
Okay, I don't think it's going to happen. I just feel like them qualifying from NA just makes sense, right? There are enough spots so you're fucking liquid. But if they do go for this Asian play to try to go to drillers route, you know what I'd do if I was them? I'd go to Australia.
Bro, Maybe. No.
Think about it. Think about it.
I don't think so.
it.
I don't think so.
But
I think
no
I'll
hyping
support.
issues.
I almost support the fuck out of it because they could probably make a pretty deep run in the major, get us
And
another slot.
smash everyone from there.
Yeah, but they get us another
That
slot for
costs
the
way
next
too
major.
much money. Do you know how much it costs to stay in Australia, Blair? I mean, you didn't have to pay for it last time.
It's
so...
liquid.
That's why you're going. That's why all these
That's why I
teams
said it's liquid.
they go to like Thailand and Vietnam because it's super cheap,
Yeah.
but you can still get good ping.
You know what? Okay, what about this? Last one. Okay.
All right.
We do East Asia slots, Mongolian slots. There's that one slot that we don't know what to do with. Just fucking whoever wants to rock up. Best of luck anywhere in the world. I don't care.
Drillers.
Wild card
Drillers,
slots
just
in
come
the
back.
major.
Drillers, yeah.
If you want to rock up, go for it. East Russian, you're Asian. South American, you're Asian. Welcome.
I'm identifying as Asian today, basically, is what you're saying.
I mean, Blair gave us the pass, so
We've got the Asia pass.
Well, I mean,
I'm Australian.
Pass.
Today I'm feeling Asian. Yeah. All right. Let's move on from this.
I think this might actually get us cancelled today.
Nah, we'll be fine. It's 2025. We're progressive.
Yeah.
Six Asian. See you later.
Yep. Let's talk eXTREMESLAND because that's coming up next week. It's pretty cool. We've finally got all of the teams more or less locked in. Some of them, as you can see in the case of Tyloo, for example, don't necessarily have a full roster. IHC, I think, are actually somewhat locked in with their roster. It's just not updated on Liquipedia. But there's some pretty cool teams in here. The ones I'll draw your attention to, ROG. Remember these guys? Genius, 789, MyRolls, Rolex. Run it back for Thailand. At least this year, we get an actual Thai team instead of a Thai org, which had, I think, 3 Mongolians, a Korean, and some other bloke from maybe Indonesia. It was kind of like, why are these guys the Thai invite? Don't really know. God's Reign's there from India as well. You must like that, Blair. Get them in. Dreamscape, Splashkey, Impression, Winter.
Let's go.
Coming back.
Let's go.
Fucking year is it?
Aussie team, Semperfly, obviously in there as well. I think that's pretty cool. There are a few that are a bit like, not sure what's going to happen here. Sensation, this Korean roster, like
Semperfly has a couple of Latvians. F Keen. I don't know what Shad Lee.
Shady.
Yeah, Shady. I know
yeah.
Keen though. All right, interesting lineup there.
Yeah.
Their project. They have 3 Aussies and 2 Europeans, and they've been playing in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a pretty good team. GG Howe, EXO.
An actual Middle Eastern team as well. An actual Middle Eastern team, you know? M Star, like EXO Esports, like I just love it. That's great.
Yep, it's pretty cool. Obviously, we're getting to see a little bit from Vietnam and the Philippines. Like, they still have some very, 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 very domestic scene.
I don't know anything about these guys.
They're not like competitive on the international stage at all, but at least domestically speaking, I think these are actual teams, which is kind of a good shout. And then the only other question mark really is this Nalakuvara team, which is the Chinese offline qualifier. I think this is like a uni-based team or a city-based team. That's what this Chinese offline qualifier was for. So you've got 3 pretty good Chinese teams plus one that's a bit like of a up-and-coming, maybe like a more of an academy-type scene team. I don't think it's too bad at all. And I'm hoping that it's going to end up being a pretty good event. I don't know who's actually going to win this one. I think this is very hard to say.
Yeah, it is. Also, just spotted out, we have Winter playing with Dreamscape. It's been a while because I actually met him in
the Winter, by the way.
The Winter. He was playing Avangard like a couple of years because I don't know what happened. He's back to Singapore? Question mark. But no, the fact that Mongols aren't playing this makes it very, very wide open. I think it's going to be fun to watch, honestly.
Yep. So no complaints from me. And then we go over to Blast Bounty as well, which is the only other tournament really coming up. And the only reason I want to mention this is like I look at this and I think, this is actually a pretty good chance for Mongols to actually do something pretty interesting. Like we've talked about them not being able to maybe break like top 4 in a big tournament like this, but look about all of the changes that almost all of these teams are having. Like G2's changing, Vitality's making changes. It looks like Mouse and maybe Navi are not. FaZe is making changes. Falcon's obviously making changes. Liquid making changes. So a lot of those top teams that they did struggle against, maybe a world where they can, do a little bit of damage and hopefully make I would be looking for a top 4, I think, in a tournament like this if I'm Mongols. Straight out of the player break, everything's going to be a little bit of a mess. Doesn't really feel like there's a better opportunity.
I mean, I think if they're able to make it top 8, make it to land itself, I think that's already going to be great, right? And this is a team who have showed. I mean, we really haven't seen them play online much. It's just been land nonstop. But they have had a few troubles, I would say, against some of the Chinese teams online, back when you had to play some of the qualifiers and whatnot. So that is a bit worrying. But then again, I guess everyone's going to be kind of rocking the same way, just kind of coming in with a little bit of ring rust as well, post the player break and everything. But then I know a few teams have already started grinding it out, already starting to boot camp and everything, getting ready for the new season and whatnot. I don't know that about the Mongols. I feel like they're taking a very well-deserved break as well. I think that's one thing at every interview they've said, like, it's been a long year. It has been a very long year for them. So I kind of have a feeling, despite all the hype behind the Mongols, I think they're going to be coming in a little bit dry here for Blast. And listen, and even if it's there's a lot of events off of that. We have I Am Cato coming up literally the week after that as well. So even if that's a wake-up call for them, it's great. But yeah, I'm just not going to be pinning too much on the Mongols for this particular event. But hey, if they make it a top 8, that itself is a massive win. That's the next stage, which is going to be on land, right? So if they get there, great job. But I'm not really seeing them do much here in the first event.
I mean, it's an interesting format. It looks like you just get a round of 32 matchup and then a round of 16 matchup. I don't know if that's a bracket or whether they get seeded, but if it's like
you choose, I think you choose who you're going to play based on how good of a team you are, and then there's like money incentives as well. So like if I'm like, obviously one of the big talking points has been Imperial Female making their way into this because of the invite. It's like, if I'm Imperial Female and I am getting like one of the earlier picks in the draft, and I decide I'm going to verse Team Spirit because I think I can beat Team Spirit, I actually get more of a like some kind of monetary benefit for beating Spirit versus if I would choose to say play against Astralis, for example. There's something to do with that as well. And then I think, yeah, you basically choose like, how good do I think I am versus a team that I think I can beat, and then it plays out in something to do with that. So yeah, it's quite strange.
It's kind of crazy how Heroic's there and they don't even have a lineup right now.
Yeah, well, there's a few teams that are kind of a little bit like that, to be honest. Like, there's a few teams where it's like Big as well. I think they've somewhat locked in their next 2 players, but I don't know if it's necessarily announced just yet. But yeah, it's all a little bit weird. It's because it's so early in the year that like half of these roster changes that we've heard rumors about haven't been confirmed at all. Yet they're gonna have to play like in 2 weeks basically.
I mean, apart from Navi, Spirit, and Mao's question mark and Mongols, almost every, and yeah, sure, Fury as well. Almost every team here have changes, right? There's a big change.
Yep. Yeah,
like
I feel
like
they all change.
Those fucking orgs are just like looking at that event start date and just like they're milking it. They're milking the negotiations. Love to see that.
But it's also going to be an event where I think majority of teams are coming in with zero expectations. It's going to be one of those.
Yeah, it'll be
I mean, Blast events are always that, but this one in particular is always going to be. I wouldn't say all Blast events, but at least the first event of the season, right?
That was a bit of Blast slander there, Bleh. I thought we were
slander. No, you talk to the teams, man. I want to take it seriously, but hey, you're coming in with like 3 new players. First event's going to happen in a couple of weeks. You're going to use it as a bit of a boot camp. I mean, that's a fact right there, right? So
I think as well the fact that it's online will make it easier to replace any teams that fuck it up. So
yep, true. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good event to start the year. Let's just say that. Like, it's not a for fun event, definitely, but it's a little bit of an interesting format. You've got probably the top 32, like more or less the 32 teams that you'd want to see. Obviously, there are some that you can argue maybe don't deserve to be there or do deserve to be there based on your personal preferences. But for the most part, you've got really quite a solid group of teams. All the roster changes are going to be all sorted out more or less by then. They have to be. So we're going to get a nice start to the year where we get to really see how things are going, where things are looking heading into 2025, and then obviously Cato and off we go, basically. We're sort of easing our way nicely into 2025. And that's more or less where we end the episode. But before we finish it here, I want you guys to make me a 2025 time capsule. Just wild prediction, whatever it may be. You could even just say Mongols is going to be the #1 team by the end of 2025. We can go back on it in our final episode of 2025 and see how close we were. So I don't know who wants to start it, or if maybe you want me to start it because I've had a bit more time to think about this than you guys. But if you have a bold prediction for 2025, it doesn't even have to be. It doesn't even have to be bold. Just give a prediction for 2025.
Mongols are going to win an S tier event, not a CCT, not an A tier event, not a small local LAN, not a LAN happening up with Dhabi or whatever. An actual S tier tournament. I don't know which one that is, but it's going to be happening this year. I don't even think it's a very hot take. I think it's a kind of warm take, honestly.
Okay. So a Cato Cologne major or a Blast Premier.
Yeah, it could be one of the IEMs. counts as well, in my opinion. The IEMs, the blasts, and whatnot,
Chengdu or something like that.
And if they do that, they will finally be the greatest Counter-Strike, Asian Counter-Strike team of all time. And I can finally put that argument to rest.
Even above We Made Fox.
Yes.
Do you know what, by the way, that short that we made, where you're basically saying We Made Fox is still the greatest of all time, it constantly, anytime Mongols does something good, anytime, it's like, oh, surely they're the #1 team now. It's like,
No, they're not. They're still not. They still haven't won an S-tier event, guys. We Made Fox won multiple S-tier events against Fnatic, against SK Gaming, against MIBR. I'm talking about like elite. And now, just because you were just a semblance of an idea in your dad's little twinkle of an eye, doesn't mean those results don't count. Just because you weren't born there doesn't mean it doesn't count. You can't erase history. The Koreans were still the best Asian Counter-Strike team of all time. That's going to change this year.
Easy. That's some nice clickbait for me for the next short. Thank you very much, Bleh. All right, Pilski, have you got one?
Oh fuck, I don't know. Let's go. Annihilation to rejoin Atox. Let's throw that one in there.
Annihilation will rejoin Atox.
That's crazy. Actually, no, it's not crazy. I can see that.
And I don't know. What will they do? What will they do if he rejoins Atox?
Atox will be the best Mongolian
I reckon.
team by the end of the year.
Wait. I reckon Annihilation to rejoin Atox, and they kick at least 2 other players. Let's go with that.
The only way I could potentially see that happening is maybe if like Dobu and Cabal would leave Atox, and because I feel like that's probably where I feel like that I have no read on the situation at all, but I feel like that's probably where the problem is. Like it's like Dobu and Cabal are like the older generation of the CS players, and Annihilation's maybe the newer generation. So like that's where it's like butting heads.
I haven't had the time to think about it very much, but let's throw some more juicy predictions. Let's go. At least some players from Rare Atom and Tai Lu will go different ways. Like there'll be some kind of merger, I reckon, at some point. There's going to be some great Chinese merging happening soon.
Wait, what if we got Jamyang, Mosey, Mercury, Kaze,
oh, sorry,
and then brought back an IGL? Maybe Advent.
No.
Wait, can we put Advent rejoins Tai Lu? What's the prize?
That'd be so hilarious, dude.
Can we do like if Advent rejoins Tai Lu, we do like a CS:GO to Asia OG merch giveaway or something?
Oh, I'm sure we can. By the way, I met Nick Hathi. If anyone doesn't know, the guy who runs or owned CS:GO to Asia before it became Valor to Asia and Paper X, in Shanghai earlier this year when I was there, and he said he has tons of CS:GO to Asia merch. So we might actually be able to swindle that. By the way, I could hit him up. Yeah.
Let's do it.
As far as my prediction is concerned, I think this will be the best year for Asian Counter-Strike ever. That's my prediction. Not just from results, I think just from the way that the events are going to play out. I think we're going to have more Counter-Strike to play in Asia than we ever have before. And I think by the end of the year, at some point throughout this year, we will have 6 slots at the major. My prediction is we're going to have another team that will do something, not maybe Mongols-esque just yet, but will do enough to get us another slot. Whether that's FlyQuest making it to the next stage, or who knows, maybe a Chinese team or a Mongolian team. But I think we'll get another slot. That's my prediction.
Cool.
All right. Positive. It's positive vibes going into 2025. So
Who would have thunk?
Great place to end the episode. Obviously, big thanks to those of you that are watching along, and hope you guys are here with this ride along with us for 2025. We'll be here throughout it, and we'll be covering all the CS for you guys. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things that support us. Obviously, follow the lads on the Twitters as well, and buymeacoffee.com/Elfishguy if you'd like to do some financial investment, let's say, into Geographically Challenged.
Oh, fucking hell.
Get your stonks in early. The Geographically Challenged coin is going to the moon. Hey guys, just at the end of that video and heading into 2025, I want to give a massive shout out to Jean, who has been a big supporter of mine on buymeacoffee.com/Elfishguy. She's been a member for over 12 months. And if you'd be interested in supporting my content and getting this content grind going, then head over there as well and check it out. Thank you very much.